Good morning and welcome to News with a View, a Fat Cat production. Today is Friday, February 21st already. This is episode 35. I had said earlier, the end of last week, that I'd have something up Wednesday and Thursday. That did not happen. Heating problems, wash machine problems, and car problems all at the same time. So things had to get done. Lots of news going on. And this will be about a 45-minute episode. Just going over some of the highlights. Of course, Patel. Close call. Knew that it was basically going to go down party lines. And that's exactly what had happened. Now, I called him the keeper of the seventh key. And now, President Trump has people in place that he can honestly trust. Not to leak out information, not to work behind his back, as had been in the case before. He learned a lot, and Democrats, I want to thank you for that. That you turned Trump into a politician, and he's still a savvy businessman. You have no idea who you elected. And yes, Democrats, you elected Trump. You see two microphones here. Only one microphone's being used. As a matter of fact, I'm going to move this guy out of the way. I don't like it there. You elected Trump. You made the politics so dirty. You just thought that you could walk right in and win that race. And you guys did a horrible job. I would say you deserve what you're going to get from Trump. But, see, we're all going to get that. And while I keep saying, and I keep telling everyone almost every episode, I am not locked in step with anyone. That's not how this podcast works. It does not work that way. I am a conservative. I am a federalist. So, to you people that might not understand what that is, you're a Republican. Yes. But I'm also absolutely 100% behind our Constitution. If a politician can show in the Constitution that what they want is covered under that, then absolutely that person should fight and exercise their rights. That's what it's all about. It has nothing to do with being a Republican or a Democrat. A federalist just wants the Constitution abided by. And where the Constitution, talking U.S. Constitution, doesn't take something into account, of course, like the Eighth Amendment, the catch-all, but the states then can come in and make the call on that for that particular state. And that's the way it should work. The first real federalist probably was Hamilton. No, he was not a president, but he held some very high positions inside the Washington administration. And he believed in the Constitution. He believed that everything centered around the Constitution. So, what does a Patel mean to most Americans? It means nothing. The FBI really is not in too many of our lives. At least you hope not. But what he is going to do is look for those agents or circumstances where they um, knowingly violated not only their ethic rules, but the Constitution and people's rights. He is not hunting down, everyone in the FBI. And the reason they wanted to know who worked on what is to look at exactly how they acted and what they were told to do and how they carried out their business. And if they violated the Constitution or they violated their ethics, then the circumstances have to be looked into. I mean, was it just the guy stepped over the line, came back, and, pressed a little too hard, or did they outright conspire to go, we're going to get this guy? Now, they can do that. And there's, again, when they say we're going to get this guy, they could be saying, let's gather up the evidence that we need legally, and we get the guy. That's how investigations work. And that's important that not be the factor here. The factor could be how they got their information, or was that information even reliable that they acted upon? So, I mean, that is where I think a lot of these problems are going to come up, is that the information they were acting upon to seek warrants, to seek indictments, to seek was not the best reliable information. And so I think Kash Patel is going to go in there. He's going to do what he needs to do to get the American public squared away with what's going on and how they're going about it, and to make sure that the trust is back in the FBI. And I've said this before in other podcasts. The FBI has always been weaponized. It is really always was strictly a hands-off department, an agency, where the White House could not even control the actions of the FBI. They acted independently, and they needed to be. They were, but there were boundaries that they needed to follow. Of course, this wasn't the Old West. So now, what people are fearing is that Kash Patel has strings to him, and Trump is the puppeteer, and that will become apparent if that's the case. I don't think it's the case. I just think that Trump wanted someone in there that he could trust, and that's what's going to happen. Do I think certain politicians need to be fearful? Yeah, I do. I think there were politicians that leaked out information to the media that they were not supposed to do, and they could be held accountable for that. Those that have a presidential pardon, they can't be prosecuted on those charges. They just can't. But what they can be called upon is to tell a court or a jury what they knew of another person acting that does not have a pardon. And those people, the ancillary people who were around certain politicians, are the ones that should be worried, because they're going to be called upon. And even though certain politicians and certain people have been given, in essence, immunity, a pardon for what they've done, and that's it. Nothing can be done to them, whether knowingly or unknowingly. This was a blanket pardon. Uh, the Fifth Amendment protection offered you and I uh, does not come into play with those people given pardons because they have no expectation of incriminating themselves. That they just don't. It can't happen. They cannot incriminate themselves. So not only do they have to say what they know, they might have to do it on the stand. Now, if they lie, mislead, or outright refuse, then that pardon won't protect them after the pardon date. So anything that happens after that, well, that's going to be on them. And take my word for it, they're going to if they've done something wrong and they have a pardon, they're going to have to allocute to it. Will have to go on the stand or go and be on record as, yes, I leaked this information, and the following people that I worked with knew I did this. And those people are the ones that will get in some type of legal issue because, they broke ethic violations and government violations and a whole bunch of things. And a lot of people did not get a pardon. So I think over the next 18 months will be extremely interesting. And of course, this will all ramp up and happen right at the real meat and potatoes, about 3 months before the midterms. And there'll be a lot of people in blue that won't be running again. There'll be some people in red that will not be running again because they're just going to get too much heat. And, politics makes strange bedfellows, right? So, Ed Martin, the acting Attorney General in Washington, D.C., a very powerful position to be in, is calling Senator Schumer and Garcia, Representative Garcia, asking them about their comments they made in certain speeches that could be looked at as trying to incite violence or alluding to using violence. In 2020, I think in March, Schumer came out with that thing, we got to fight and get violent and all this other stuff. And I think really Congresswoman Waters should be brought up on charges of inciting violence at certain rallies. It was just, it was a dog whistle. She was a dog whistle to a lot of things to agitate. So Ed Martin has sent out letters asking for explanations. Now what happens is, now you go on record, even though I'm almost certain like the next day there was so much blowback from Schumer's that he came out and said, no, you misinterpreted what I was saying. Absolutely no violence, and yet if you look at what he said, he was calling out for violence, and he does it all the time. And Garcia, I wasn't certain about what he had said with the justices and some other comments that he had made, but it was enough to turn heads to go, are you talking about being violent? Is that a threat? And now they were all screaming, well, they have their freedom of speech. Interesting that they can have their freedom of speech to say, we can say what we want, But if you were to say, I'm against the LGBTQ, I'm just outright against them, you could be charged with a hate crime. And what happened to your free speech, right? So it's always interesting to watch the other team. And hey, listen, the Republicans did it too, and the Democrats. But it's interesting to see how all of a sudden they run for the protection of freedom of speech when you couldn't. So, I think during the Patel hearings, and even in the Pam Bundy hearings, Schiff stood out as a staunch opponent to these people getting the confirmation. Bundy and Patel. Does this put a target on him? I think that target's been on him a long time. And I think that there'll be a lot of information coming out official channels, not leaked out. Trump wants this done by the numbers. He doesn't want anything leaked out. He doesn't want anyone to say they were treated unfairly, or as should be the case. As should be the case, if the government is going to make charges against you, you want it done on the charges and not on a bias. And so I can understand that. I'm all for that. If something was really done wrong, I don't like when they get you for spitting on the sidewalk or jaywalking as a means to get you. Because that means that they could do that to any one of us and have their gotcha moment. And that's dangerous. That's very dangerous. And I don't think that in our system of what we call fair play, if that even exists anymore, or it didn't really ever exist, that most Americans would go, yeah, okay, I don't like the guy, and couldn't you find something else? And if there was nothing else to go to, did you have to go there? It just doesn't seem right. It doesn't have the right feel, smell, or taste. It just, something's off with that. So, I think that Schiff and the gang, they're very nervous. And they should be. There was a lot of shenanigans done on their side. Nadler, and you're going to see a lot of these people aren't going to run again come the midterms. If they're up, McConnell has already said he's not going to run, and thank God it's time. It's time. Some of these people just have to say, that's it, and it's over, and thank you for your services, and be on your way. Where you have other people, Grassley's the same way. It's time for some of these people to go. And there's other people that can take those spots. That's just my feeling on the subject of that. Let's get to Elon Musk, who is just rolling along. And I almost didn't catch that. He is finding monies and improprieties, but we don't know what those improprieties are. Was it just government being lazy? I think you'll find that 90% is waste. Oh, I apologize. I was afraid this was going to start, but it ends soon. So most of the errors and waste that he will find will be, just laziness, not criminal intent. I think some things need to be looked into, of course, just to make sure. Where the big problem, oh, I'm almost done with this cold. I know it doesn't sound that way, but believe me, I'm almost done with this cold. Where the big brouhaha will happen, and it will happen, is with the NGOs. And those are non-government organizations that get funding and compensation from the government. And where that will get into the nitty-gritty is the people that are making the funding available had relatives or an influence the other way. That if you put that down as a conflict of interest and made people aware, hey, yeah, we're voting on this, and that's my daughter's organization. So I'm informing you, if you don't want me to vote on it, then I abstain. But if he never made that known and he voted, that's a conflict of interest. Now, I've seen situations on executive boards and boards that I sat on where a conflict of interest is made available and known, to everyone. And they go, no, we believe that you will vote according to the standards set forth that we must vote to, and use that bar. And that was fine, because everyone knew. And I would say most of the time, if I had a conflict of interest in it, I would abstain. I say, I can't. I'll sit in the conversation, and, I might make my views known. Or the other times I'll, just went out and got a coffee and, call me when you're done. Because I don't want to be influenced. I don't want to use what I am going to say is influence colleagues. So, and that's done all the time. A conflict of interest doesn't bar you from performing your job. It's just making everyone know that, hey, I have a conflict. And if you feel that the conflict can be taken care of, that's fine. But if the conflict is so conflicting, then, you really have to say, either get rid of the conflict or you can't have this position. So, and I think what they're going to find is a lot of these NGOs, there are a lot of hanky-panky with it and non-disclosure, which could be a problem. And that is what some people were screaming about. And when I say screaming about, with the Supreme Courts, with the justices who had no they had no problems with filing a conflict of interest or a notice of such, but no one did anything with it. And if they didn't do it, no one did anything about it. So I can understand where people go, hey, we got to have some rules here, and they have to be enforced by, the head justice. That must then say, hey, Thomas, you can't have anything to do with this vote. Or listen to the arguments or have any say in it. So, and also taking a vacation from someone in itself is not a conflict of interest, unless, mind you, unless it could be shown that that is a conflict of interest, that, I'm going to take you over here, Justice Kavanaugh. I'm just using his name because that's off the top of my head. I could have said someone there or, whatever. And say, all expense paid, you're doing a good job, you need a little rest, go take care of it. And then when you come back and they go, oh, by the way, I'm having a problem over here, and it's going to be possibly brought before you. Now, at that point, I would feel hoodwinked and, say I'm going to recuse myself from that. I can't help you. It was never a quid pro quo. But that's why these people, they should know better than even doing any of that stuff, accepting, a free vacation. Now, sometimes if you're friends, hey, I've been friends with this guy for 30 years, and, he's got a private plane, we're going to flying up to this fishing hole in Montana, or go hunting, that's not a big deal. You might want to make it known that, hey, this person is, I'm going on his dime, he's taking me as his guest. And then it's known, and then, if something comes up and they go, oh, I heard that name before. Yeah, didn't you go on vacation with him? Yeah, well, we can't have you listen to this. So, in those type cases, I kind of feel that way. But remember, these people that are sitting at the top of the pyramid, they know a lot of people. So you can't say you have to exclude them all, but someone has to be the filtering system for it. Someone has to be there, and it can't be someone lesser telling people above that, you can't do this. It has to be the Chief Justice. And then that report has to go to, let's say, the White House and, ethics or whatever, just for clarification. And just so that go, hey, more than one eyes have seen this. More than, one set of eyes have seen this. This is not just him, rubber stamping or doing something. So I can understand there has to be some little oversight. No power to act, but to observe and then report. Who can have a problem with accountability? Right? You can't say, I don't want accountability. That's the way that works. So, going back to Schiff and the gang, yeah, you are now walking into Dodge City on a weekend, and when you hit those city limits, your guns are taken from you, your weapons are taken from you. Be prepared, and you're going to see these people running for cover and just throwing the most crazy stuff out there so that people take the bait and they go this way instead of going that way. And they will sow doubt, and it will be interesting. It's going to be interesting. But I think in the end, a lot of these people are going to be in trouble. And like I said, this is not just going to be Democrats. There's going to be some red people in there too. And my prediction is before the midterms, Fetterman will become a Republican. He will not become an independent. There's no money for an independent. Bernie Sanders is the only independent. He gets all his money, going to college campuses, and mom and dad, give the kids an extra $20 and they got $20, it's not theirs, they throw it in the bucket and it goes to Bernie. There. Very few large donors to Bernie. Maybe a Soros or something like that, but very few. Now, the other thing in the news, of course, is Trump. The buyouts, he can buy people out. Always said that from day one. He has that right. And he has the right to make cuts according to the prescribed procedures. And that is absolutely no problem. It's when you leave those prescribed procedures that you always end up in trouble, and I go, use a simple, and it's a terrible analogy to make, but I'm going to use it. When you don't follow procedures and plans, you have airplane accidents. When one party doesn't obey the controller, or doesn't follow the rules, or decides they're going to do something non-standard, that's when problems happen. And that is something that Trump just doesn't get that. He really, when he plays in the sandbox, it's his sandbox. And that's a problem sometimes. Right now, he could use the bully pulpit, and he can go and do stuff. I don't know in the next 5 or 6 months if that momentum can continue, but in 5 or 6 months, he will have accomplished about 70% of what he has wanted to. And that's his whole way of doing things. Throw so much out there that you can't possibly grab everything and something gets through. He does his best work, as I said, in chaos. You and I, or at least for me, chaos is not a friend. So he thrives in that. He does his best thinking with that. He stays up. He doesn't sleep much. And that is who he is. And until the Democrats, and they still don't get it. They still don't get it. Because it goes so contrary to what they're used to dealing with. That they just can't get their heads wrapped around this guy. They just can't figure him out. And they use the legal system to try to hold him off. I don't think the union stood a chance in what they were arguing about when I said that the firings, and I said that if you look in the contracts, they could do a lot of things, and Trump is doing a lot of things. Now, just a fun fact, the president that had cut the most amount of federal jobs to date was Bill Clinton. Didn't know that. He took about 100,000 federal jobs. Now, he did it through, attrition and jobs that people were retiring that just weren't replacing them. And Al Gore, remember, reshaping government. That was his big thing, reshaping government. And that was really the first DOGE was done by Clinton and Gore. You might want to look that up. That was his big thing. And he just wanted to, Gore was in charge of that, and he wanted to rethink how the government process on an administration level, not on a legal basis, on an administration level, could be done. And he was actually extremely successful with that. And I don't think they got enough credit for that. And like I said, I'm a Republican, but I liked Clinton and I voted for him. I voted for him twice. Because facts are hard. You can't fight the facts. You know, we all made money. The economy was good. It was a boom time, and you know, was he lucky? Was he in the right spot at the right time? Don't care. He was the guy sitting at top, and we all made money. So that is something that really needs to be looked at and used as an example. And a lot of people got away from that, didn't like it. You know, they like creating jobs. You know, the government shouldn't be creating jobs. But they do. And some of these jobs you knew were ridiculous jobs. And then they got even more ridiculous with the reasoning on why. And then the money just started flying out the door. Last 4 years, money was flying out the door. And it wasn't to create jobs or something. These were all very shaky organizations that got a lot of money. And people go, well, you know, Social Security. Well, 1% of the money that comes through us gets, you know, is fraud. Well, if you're dealing with $8 trillion and now you got $800 million in fraud, or $20 billion in fraud, you know, do you ever look to see how much of a pile $800 million is, or $300 billion? You don't think that should be caught, and you don't think that technology can't be used to uncover some of these problems and fixed? I mean, I do get the idea, and certainly that any new technology being brought out has to be safe, has to be reliable, and has to work. When you look at the government's, I'm sure they are still using, basic programming, you know, in a lot of their stuff. That it's not scalable. Whereas once you got into the SQLs and able to expand databases and just keep stretching them out, meaning I don't have to re-identify each field. It's caught, captured, and it knows what to do. Not AI, but it knows what to do. It's programmed to know what to do. But as you make this more robust, you might also make it more unsafe for people to get into it, to extract that data, to actually go into that data and pull out stuff that they shouldn't have. So, safety and standards and everything else like that have to be met on any of these new programs. I don't believe in just rushing something out and, just to say you did it. And you hear a lot on DOGE, that these 19 and 25-year-old kids. One, they're not kids. Okay, we send 19-year-olds and 18-year-olds and even 17-year-olds with guns out to do our bidding. I think putting them in front of a computer is okay too. Having supervision over them and someone watching over them, like in the military, you had a sergeant, and he oversaw. That was his job. He took care of you. He made sure that you got the training, that you were up to snuff, and you did things by the book. By the book. So, the same thing is with these people. They're government employees, they have to go by the book. Were some of them hackers? Yeah, I'm sure. They could go in there and find all the data they need. Where maybe some of this data was not retrievable without you knowing where to look for it. Meaning there wasn't a menu board and, pick A, pick B, pick C. You didn't know a queue existed. It just wasn't there. You couldn't find it. These people will find it. And they're hackers. They're good at figuring it out. Are you afraid that they will take the information and change the information? Again, as good as hackers as they are, there's better hackers who'd be able to find out that this data was changed and manipulated. So, but then once that happens, then the milk is soured and there's no one souring the milk. You might be able to take the milk and make cottage cheese out of it, but it's no longer milk. So, it's something that I can see people getting upset about, and hopefully there's so many safeguards that can't happen. And I don't believe that's going to happen. That's not. Musk is not going to have to make up an accident scenario. He's not going to have to stage anything. It's there. In government, there's fraud and there's waste. It's inherent to the process. But I think lately it has gone so unchecked, and people just turning a blind eye to it and saying, well, that's business as usual. Enough of business as usual. We put Trump in there. Trump is going to find all this information out. Trump is also going to find out the people that violated the laws that almost prevented Trump from running, and how it was done, and what was the motive behind it. The motive wasn't justice. We all know that. And if that was the case, Biden wouldn't have given out blanket pardons the way he did. He will go down in history as one of the worst presidents in the United States as far as corruption. I mean, criminals can only wish to be, probably, and allegedly where he's going to be placed. So, all right, I said it was going to be a short one today. I just want to get this going. Tomorrow will be a longer one, possibly with Alice Incognito here. I have to do a lengthy read today and figure out what's for tomorrow. Again, Fridays are always funny. I'm sorry. Tonight we might do one that will go out later today. Day behind myself here. But Fridays are usually a quiet day in the Washington area. And the only time there's something is if a bombshell is being dropped that needs to be built up over the weekend with, what ifs and, Why are we only finding out now? So I'm not, again, going after too much internationally. I said I wasn't going to do that because of course, my sympathy goes out to Israel with a lot of stuff going on. We protect our friends and not the people who is chanting the street "Death to America" every day. So you know what? Screw them, and we stay loyal to our friends who aren't screaming "Death to America" in the streets every day. They might have disagreements with us that are legitimate disagreements, and some that are just political disagreements. But I think friends can overlook that and still be friends. But when you're telling me I want you dead every minute of the day, and anytime a camera's pointed at you, yeah, well, whatever I'm going to give you is going to be dropping on you, just so you know. All right, and with that, again, as always, say a prayer for people. It does help. Prayer does help. You can't petition God, but you could ask God. Give to charities, register charities. Charities don't come to you. You must go to those charities. Do not be a victim helping a victim. And with that, I am going to fade to black.